So you're married for 20 years. You've got 3 kids, 15, 13, and 10, when the most unthinkable thing, the most tragic possible thing happens, and Tania passes away, collapsing while playing touch rugby in a game in Northcote. And I was sort of thinking about how to approach this part of the episode, and I don't want to try to just sensationalize the death. I am interested in how you dealt with it, but a big part of what I think the listeners get from this podcast is hearing from people at the absolute rock bottom worst part of their life and the tools they used to pull themselves out and how they rebuild their life afterwards, and the support of community and friends around. And because there are people going through similar tough times out there, probably not to that extent. But if you're okay, in as much or as little detail, are you able to talk to us about when you first heard that there'd been a problem with Tania?
Sure. And look, it's a hard one to talk about, but it's also a reality, and not just for me, but like you said, for so many people. I was actually, I'd been out on a work trip with Bidfood, who are one of our suppliers. We'd been out fishing. We'd had an absolute stellar day, oil slick, calm water, caught heaps of fish, and just got back into Takapuna. There was a chance I was going to make it to that touch game, but for whatever reason, I didn't, and we stayed on and had a few beers, to sort of toast the day, and then received the phone call. And you go from having a little beer buzz on to just trying to even wrap your head around what the fuck was just said to you and how could this be true. And all the repeated message was, just get to the hospital, we'll explain more when you get there. And so that was, just like stunned mullet. And you kind of, world just flashes before your eyes. And then, heading into the hospital, doctors and nurses not really giving you any information, because obviously they're working on Tania at the time. People sitting in there hysterical. And I guess I'm sort of a process guy first and foremost, and so I'm just trying to process what this is, what sort of the percentages that she's going to get through this, how she's going to be when she gets through this, where the kids are, what we have to do there. And so there was a lot of pacing. Everyone's trying to put their arm around me. I don't want anyone to put their arm around me. I'm just trying to work out what the fuck to do. And then that kind of went on for a few days. That first day, the doctors did invite me in to the intensive care. And that was an image that I'll never forget. And just, I didn't think any human could lose that amount of blood. The floors were just completely covered, and there's the love of your life, the mother of your children. And it sort of hits home that it's like, fuck, this isn't a given that she's going to get through this. And then you go home and you've got to think and process, and it was brutal.
In the hours and the days after that, because she was in hospital for about a week, right? 5 or 6 days.
Yep.
And then you're juggling a whole world that's been thrown upon you. You've got 3 young kids, and you need to be their rock. You've got, Tania was a household name. She was a superstar. So you've got media wanting to know what's going on. There's huge interest in the story. You're trying to look after yourself, and you're trying to figure out, is she going to make it? How were you during that period?
It's cliche, but the adrenaline kicks in, and not in a sort of normal sports sense or a fight or flight sense, but in a, right, I've got to get through this. There were a lot of hours in silence, trying to get my head around everything that was going on. My parents were phenomenal. They kept an absolute sort of tight bubble around the kids. and so could go in and see them. They would bring them into the hospital with me, and then my network of friends and Tania's friends were just phenomenal, and the fun and the laughter and the joking around that you have with a lot of people, but when the shit hits the fan, you really find out sort of who your true mates were, and thankfully we had a huge village of friends, and so everyone sort of rallied round. And look, there wasn't a lot that many of them could do other than just let us know that they were thinking of us, that they were prepared to do whatever it took. Like I said, up until those sort of last hours, we all genuinely thought just the strength of character, the state of health, how fit and that she was, that she would get through. And then, when we're having these sort of one-on-ones with the doctors and they're trying to prepare you for the worst, and, you're sort of going, yeah, I can accept that for a normal person, but T's not normal. She's got a hell of a lot of fight in her. And, it was pretty tough. But again, a rock-solid family and a phenomenal group of friends.
It was how would you describe it? Was it a brain aneurysm? Is that?
Yeah.
Yep. So what does that mean exactly? What has happened there?
So basically inside and just bleeds out through the artery, and they just can't stop it. And she lost so much blood and what have you to the brain that, her chance of sort of coming back, even if they did take her off life support and she could support herself, the life wouldn't have been necessarily one that she would have wanted. And weirdly, as a sort of husband and wife, it was something that we'd spoken about. Her mother went through dementia, and we just sort of saw the quality of life, certainly in the last few months. And we both had open and honest chats that it wasn't something that, we would ever let each other go through. And so that side of, well, it sounds hideous and callous, that side of it was kind of an easy decision to make. Obviously, I had to do it with her brothers in the room. We sat with the doctors. We got second opinions, third opinions, but all the evidence was explicitly clear that it wasn't going to be a life that would be normal. So it was. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And off the back of that, I sort of made some internal commitments and sort of pushed on.
What causes something like that to happen?
Partially sort of genetic, that there's not 100% science about it. I don't want to sort of put my foot in and say something that that isn't right, because I'm not an expert in that field, but it just sounds like extremely unlucky. And especially for a fit young woman who, again, she very rarely missed a day of doing exercise. She thrived. It gave her peace of mind to be able to go out and exercise every day.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think this is the part of the story, and Dwayno the legend had already been bubbling away, and we'll get to some of that a bit later, but this is the part where everyone we spoke to talked about what an incredible job you've done, like laid the blueprint for how to deal with this incredible trauma. So a part of that, like you've spoken about, is the community that rallied around you. And I spoke to Hugh and I spoke to Scotty and others, and they said they were there with you through the whole time. So you had that support to lean on. But you have 3 kids. You've got 3 kids that you need to be the leader for. Are you making decisions in your own mind? Are you trying to present an image of strength for your kids?
I don't know if it was an image of strength, but I wanted to present an image of I knew where we were going and that we were going to be okay. And that, I was there for them. So, we all moved into the same room. Had a lot of buddies around, sort of constantly just checking in, people dropping food off, someone just popping in for a beer or a cup of tea. And then we would talk a lot. We'd watch videos. We were very fortunate in terms of there was a lot of footage of T, just with what she'd done through netball, but also her commentary. And we'd sit and watch some of her Sky TV bloopers. from commentary, and they would give us a chance to have a laugh and again think about all the good things and remember the positives. And so it was a big transition around reminding the kids just how important mum was and how mum would want them to continue to live their life. My sister also at that time, was phenomenal, sort of really helped move in and help with sort of just a lot of the basic stuff around the house and with the kids. And so she was an absolute rock as well.
It's incredible in those challenging moments, the strength of character of the people around you in life. Your retelling of that story is incredibly similar to the situation where my father passed away, to the point of even getting the phone call. My brother gave me a phone call and said, you need to get to the hospital now. The days from when he was admitted until when he finally passed are a bit of a blur, but you remember people or things or stuff. I only really have one burning memory of one thing that a friend of mine, and I'll shout her out, Priscilla Duncan, we've had her on the podcast before, gave me a call. And I remember that call to this day. I remember that's probably the only thing that I do remember about it. But you remember the people that were around and were peripheral, and it galvanizes almost those friendships and those relationships, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was special. And, like the sort of wake mentality is that, a lot of people gathered around home. Our neighbours, we had a great relationship with all of our neighbours, so they knew exactly what was going on. They would let people park on their grass berms or in their driveways. They would help drop food over. They would go and run errands if required. So we were very fortunate on that front. We were very fortunate that when people came around, it was all just telling them stories and talking of the best memories that they had of T, of the strength, when she was still in the hospital, the strength of their mum, just to help give the kids that belief in who she was as a person. So yeah. It was phenomenal.
It's almost like a Māori or Pacific way to come together, to come into the home, to share the grief, to share the stories, to share the memories, because that then is what keeps that legacy continuing and going. Yep. I'm so thankful that your kids and yourself had the opportunity to share those memories and to have those people come in, because it's incredibly important as part of the healing process to not just let that person go. And you've done it in such a tangible way, which we'll get onto in a moment as well. But was it in the early stages of that the idea of the foundation was starting to be crystallized? Yeah.
Sort of, again, once sort of T had passed and we were going sort of through and planning, what have you, and another good friend, Steve Yukovic, and Scotty and I were sort of sitting around and going, well, we can't just let her legacy die. We're going to find a way to honour this. We don't know how yet, but we think we should do something. We think, at her funeral and memorial, you should say something. And so, we sort of built up a loose plan in our heads around, how we wanted to do it. And we at least wanted to acknowledge at that time that we were planning to do something so that those who did want to help in a particular way could. Obviously, it was a huge funeral. We sort of packed out Harbour Stadium. We had people sitting outside in the stands. I think we had 85,000 people watching live. And again, that was a testament to T and how she lived her life and conducted herself. We were hell-bent that sort of legacy and that memory of a person that, just basically soaked every ounce of fun out of life was going to be remembered and continued through. And so, the birth of the foundation sort of came together, and it was easy to do over a few beers, but the reality was it was a hell of a lot of hard work, and the danger was we didn't know what we didn't know, and so we'd made a lot of promises, but we then had to sort of step up and deliver against it.
That funeral gripped the nation, I feel like. I had a look at the YouTube video. It was like 80,000 views of the funeral. Like, she made such a strong impression on the world in New Zealand. And I watched some of the service back in Sumo, who's been a former guest, did a great job. And I think it really speaks testament to the job that you and Tania both did, that all three kids got up there and spoke with you at the end. Like, it's such a hard thing to do, but they nailed it. And so much emotion, as you can imagine, but it was really cool. It was really cool.
You also shook everyone's hand.
I don't think I got everyone, but I tried to.
Well, there's 2,000 plus is a lot, but that's a testament to your character as well, that in those moments, fronting up and showing what it meant to the family and leading your family is an incredible gesture as well.
I'm just going to read something. We've spoke to your kids, and they've each contributed greatly to this episode. I'm just going to read something Taylor sent us through. She said, Dad got dealt a bloody shitty card in life when we lost Mum, and Dad stepped up and absolutely took it in his stride. No one deserved what happened to him. Dad has been the most amazing dad and mother figure for us. He made it possible for us to do everything we wanted to do. He supported us in every way. Not many people, a few days after their wife's death, think about keeping her legacy alive like he did with setting up Mum's foundation. And now, not only is he keeping her alive, but he's touching the lives of so many young women, which is bloody incredible and inspirational. And I think now might be a good time to talk about the foundation and why it was so important, what it does and why it was so important to remember Tania's legacy and help young women.
Yep. I think when we just lived our lives together, T was T, and she was the kids' mum, she was my wife, she was your bestie. The funeral and suddenly the taking away of that personality actually highlighted that here was someone who really did live life with a passion and saw the best in everything and the best in everyone. Very rarely had a bad word to say against people, would compete on the international stage and still do it with a little smile and a spring in her step, would make a mistake on a international stage and then look across at the bench and wink and sort of go, and joke, because while she took everything about her life or her sporting career and her kids and family seriously, she never sort of really took herself too seriously. And I think that's what made her such a people magnet. We could go down and, when she was playing for the Southern Steel, and she'd only been down there for a little while. And, the locals down there just completely embraced her. In fact, written into the contract, Lee Piper was running it down there, and one of the things that was sort of written into the contract was, that I got a couple of dozen bluff oysters to take home. Well, we'd forgotten them one time, and the local people on the plane gave her permission to quickly race back to the house, grab the bluff oysters, and then she ran onto the plane and handed the bluff oysters over. It's almost unheard of, but with her it sort of came, with the package. She got away with more than probably any other human, and probably packed more into, her life than most other people do, into her short life than most people do into another life. But yeah, always did it with that sort of smile and, wry smirk on her face. And so transitioning that into the foundation just seemed like a very natural progression. I think with it, when Tania sort of went out and was teaching, I ended up sort of moving from the sort of Orewas to the St. Kents and the Christons and what have you. For her, she actually took a lot more enjoyment out of working in the Mangareis and the Kelston girls and things like that, and helping a lot of these girls who perhaps didn't have, all the opportunities that were presented. And so, when I thought about how that defined her, when she could have had her pick of any probably private school in the country or around the world, that's where she actually got the most kickback, and she would often be buying sort of breakfast for some of these kids or packing up boxes of cereal because they might not have had breakfast in the morning. So that sort of seemed a natural area for us to go and help. And, ironically, it sort of seems weird to say now, but sort of 16 years ago when we were thinking of this, women's sport wasn't nearly as professional as what it is now, and so we sort of came in at a time that was, phenomenal in terms of the difference and the help that we could make for some of these young women. So, yeah.
So what does the foundation do?
The foundation, the bones of the foundation came off the back of that. We thought we would assist 12 young girls in the first year. We wanted to support them for 3 years. Again, our view was that you couldn't just simply chuck someone some money hope that they're going to improve, and then shake their hand at the end and thank them very much. So we said, no, we need to have them for 3 years. We need to actually be able to make an impact. We need to give them workshops so that they come out of this, that they're going to be better young women than they went in. Financially, we're going to be able to assist them so that their mum and dads, some of the pressures come off. And some of these girls have some phenomenal stories and hurdles that they've overcome to get to where they are in their sport. So we want to put that. We want to put workshops so they come out, they learn to speak publicly. They learn to look at their social media profiles and, what are they putting on there? How's that going to impact them potentially down the track if they get a massive sponsorship? Again, and then we also gave them a mentor. And so a lot of Tania's sort of friends from not just netball but from all different sports said, well, yeah, I'm keen to mentor one of these young women and I'll help them through the headaches and heartaches and hardships of, being dropped from a team or, having a scrap at home with mum and then having a front up on the sports field or what have you. And so we created the mentors, we created the workshops, and then we had the scholarship partners. And then the scholarship partners was to sort of come on board and help expose them to, a different life, And so Scotty through Precinct Property at the time, Steve was working at ASB, he's now at CEO of KiwiBank, bringing these girls in and showing them actually what is achievable, and the irony with the Scotties, he's a Arua College boy, he studied to be a teacher as well. Then he went and worked out in the fire service, calls himself a pilot because he drove the hovercraft. That gives you a pilot's license. You can ask him one day about the Mangere Bridge. Steve came from Glenfield College, taken his way through, and is now CEO of KiwiBank. And so again, these guys got the fact that if you go out and you make the right choices and good decisions, you can actually impact where your life is heading, irrespective of where you've come from or your background. And so it became quite a compelling opportunity to put to these girls. And so that was all good. And then we thought, well, what do we do? Do we just advertise in the paper and see who put their hands up? And but we thought we'd start off with 6 sports that Tania was involved with, and each sport would get 2 spaces. And again, we were sort of naive in our expectations and even around setting up a charity. And so we sought advice from a guy, Ant Ford, who'd been heavily involved with not-for-profits. He was a local guy, knew Tania really well, played tennis against her, and he was phenomenal. And so he was coming in for a few months and was just going to give us a little bit of a hand. Ended up staying for 5 years, and also put us on to Karen Morgans, who Karen and Tania used to flat together, and Karen became sort of the scholarship manager. In the end, she was the scholarship mum. And basically, she had all these girls as sort of 36 additional kids to her own too, and created just this real place of love, sisterhood that all the girls could then learn and grow from, ask each other questions, and we've sort of morphed now from just having 6 sports. We're up at I think 13 sports now that we're across. We've worked, some sports don't necessarily complement as much. Other sports have moved on a hell of a lot from when we started. Rugby now has become so much more professional in everything that they offer the girls, and their pathway is sort of starting to come in before we get our hands on the girls. So we're looking at other opportunities. And then for a lot of these young women now, you're seeing these pathways through American colleges, more and more professional sport, cricket, now with the equal pay opportunities. It's a really special time to be a young female sports person.
You speak to the opportunities that rugby has now, but one of the alumni stories, the really nice ones, is Renee Holmes. And that video that lives on the Tania Dalton Foundation website, where comes from a single parent household. Her father would drive her from Gisborne to Hastings, 3 hours there, 3 hours back, to support her sporting pursuits. And it's when a recipient of the scholarship speaks to the help that has given them, and then you see the trajectory of success as well, that she's now a world champion, is phenomenal work that you're doing in the sports sector. So we spoke to Paris Mason in the lead up to this as well, who spoke of the sisterhood. It's amazing that term, the terminology maybe that you guys use within there just really resonates through that group. It's It's really, really powerful stuff. And it echoes a little bit, I think, of maybe your own journey after the loss of Tania and supporting your own kids in their own sporting achievements. That they've spoken all that they didn't miss a single training session. Some of them were running 3 or 4 sports, and you would not let that go despite the loss of Tania, that you would support them through that. So in a way, it's almost like the foundation not only echoes Tania's values and legacies, but your own as well in terms of supporting future athletes' endeavours.
Yeah, the reason Tania and I absolutely loved and were passionate about sport, obviously we were both heavily involved with it. Our circle of friends came from sport. But the thing we love about sport is it transcends race, religion, wealth. You go and put on your team jersey. I don't know if you haven't had breakfast or you slept in the garage with 12 other people, or whether you were in the penthouse. You all come together for a common goal. And it unites people in a way that I don't think there's really a lot of other things in society do. So we are massive advocates of it. People talk of a sort of divisive country at the moment. You go into sport, all of that gets parked, whether it's for the 80 minutes on the field or for the training sessions. Everybody comes together as one, and we are such a multicultural nation at the moment that I love it. I love the way seeing my kids go through the sport and the mixture and the melting pot of sort of friends that come through the doors. And the thing that I love about that too is the kids help set the expectations when kids come into their house, and they know that you've got to go and say good day to Dwayno, and you just can't plod yourself down on the couch, and common courtesies, and they've got to go and have a chat to Anna too. So yeah, I think that's what I love about sport is there's a lot of rules, but it transcends so many things.